Well, all right. Oh, excuse me. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Jason Levine. Thank you so much for joining on today's Creative Kickoff. What's going on? How's your week been? What have you been up to? Have you been seeing all the stuff around AI video in the last, when did we do the last one? A couple weeks ago. So there's been an enormous amount of releases, of updates in the AI video space. And I wanted to take the time today to really talk about those because while there seem to be so many new or updated versions of some classics like Runway just introduced Gen 3, and I think the big, for about a week or so or 8 days, you had Kling, which took the X world by storm and was being compared to Sora, and this was like, this is better than Sora. And then you had Luma with Dream Machine, and again, suddenly, I don't know, everything changes again, and everyone is just kind of freaking out. So really curious in the chats to hear, what you have to say and what you're experiencing and what you're thinking about all this as this stuff continues to develop so quickly. I think one of the most amazing things about it is just the fact that we're seeing so much development. And how does that affect you in the kind of work that you're doing? What are you thinking about this? There also seems to be, some I wouldn't say changing of the tides. I hate expressions. But yeah, like you're seeing a lot of mixed commentary around the capabilities and how fast it's coming together. And is this, apparently there was some AI film preview recently that was shut down for whatever reason. So I'm really curious, for those of you in the chat, what are you thinking about all this? What's going on? What's up, Chase Kinney? What's up, Mark Hadley? Michelle Saporito, Oliver Andrews, Idra Ekpo, Howard, how's it going? Fellow evangelist colleague, good to see you, man. Sean Cassell, Keys. Kuneta Noor, nice to see you. Mike Babb, yes, the progress is amazing. Couldn't agree more. So that's what this morning is. This is an informal chat. I don't even know if I'm going to screen share necessarily, largely because my screen is a mess. But I'm really curious. I want you to be vocal here because, X is kind of my main social go-to. And again, so, let's just talk about Dream Machine. So, one of the things between that and Kling that I think were really significant, and Gen 3 of Runway 2, you'll now notice that as opposed to even just a few months ago, I wouldn't even say 6, I'd say 2 to 3 months ago, a lot of the text to video, image to video stuff that you saw was largely, very slow-mo, very sort of dramatic. But again, a main characteristic of it was that it was slow motion, just sort of by design. However, they're training the LLMs, you always kind of had these very slow, dramatic movements. Maybe it's easier to generate that way. I'm not an AI engineer. But what you then saw sort of with Sora was this very, now again, a lot of people, it's sourced from game engine stuff, and that's why it's all real time. But that was kind of a huge differentiator, right? That most of it was real time and it was fast motion. Well, Kling and Luma and Gen 3 of Runway all kind of showcased that it's this real time, real motion. Yeah, I saw some slow-mo clips too. But also hyper realistic, really focusing on skin and skin tone and skin blemish. A couple of the examples that I saw from Runway Gen 3 were super tight close-ups, sort of simulating, old Hollywood style 50 mil f1.2, sort of the Hollywood crop, just really tight on the face, and you'd see people's skin blemishes or beard hair or whatever it was, but it's just really sick detail. There are a couple of scenes with, trains going by and you're seeing the light reflect back onto the face and it's illuminating little bits of hair or pimples or pockmarks or whatever. I mean, just the detail is sick. It's crazy. Is it useful? Is it? Random generated person in a film. Is that great? Is it weird? Do you want to see? I'm trying to think of an actor. Big actor, actress, or do you want to see random character generated person? I don't know. That's what I'm really curious about. Howard, my quick thoughts on AI video, text to video, is too unreliable, especially with long processing images. I'd much prefer image to video so I can quickly define subject styles beforehand. I like that. Yeah. And it's, there's definitely a lot of that too. Interestingly enough, too, I've been most, maybe just from an interested standpoint, the image to video stuff for me too has been really, really neat. That was another one where Luma in particular, Dream Machine showed off a lot of these image to videos. That classic meme of the boyfriend looking back. I don't know if that was a Luma one. I'm losing track who AI'd who, but that, classic meme of the beautiful woman walking ahead, the boyfriend turning back, and the girlfriend giving him the stink eye. One of them animated that via image to video. Animated, brought it to life. And, it had all of the sort of now standard characteristics. It looks great for the first 80, 90 frames, and then there's some weird smeariness, and the guy's face completely changes shape, or his eyes, or just something. It's just different. But it's really interesting. And again, I think there's something in there. But I'm just really curious what everyone's thinking about this in terms of film production. I've talked a lot as we've done these. One of the things that I lean into, coming back to some of our in-app AI, particularly with Premiere, is sort of that AI, assisted AI workflows. Things like enhanced speech or podcast enhance or scene edit detection or the clarity slider, automatic compression in Essential Sound, which is it's using AI to effectively give you back some time. You're still doing it. It's still your stuff. It's just making the process faster or easier, a little better, in many cases, maybe a lot better, as opposed to purely generative content from the start. But then, as I'm looking over here, there was also this past week, Google showed their early version of their, what was it called? Text to video, video to text to audio. So you have silent video, and maybe it's a man running through snow, and you give it a prompt, man running through snow, and then it not only generates the sound design, but then synchronizes it to the video. And I saw there was just a series. Oh, hello, Ton Fredericks, great to see you. Series of I wouldn't say hate tweets, hate X's. What do you call them anymore? We should just go back to Twitter. Elon, really, X's. It just doesn't work. But there are a lot of sound designers who are just really not happy about this. Like, hey, that's kind of the whole thing. And by the way, the examples that they showed, they were okay. And of course, they're curating the best. And was there post-editing? Maybe, I'm sure. Listen, they're trying to inspire, excite people. But they're not the only one. A couple others have done. I think 11 Labs has that too now. Again, I'm just losing track. There's so many of these. They're doing so much of it. 11 Labs, their own text to sound effects. Really good stuff. If you haven't seen any of those demos, right? So just generative sound effects, sound design. Now, we talked about this about a year ago in an early kind of here's what you might expect to see coming to Premiere and other Adobe services, and sound effects was one of them. So generating the sound effects is one thing. Automatically synchronizing to the video in one step, that's something else. And again, where does that fall? Does that fall into the assisted AI? Well, in one degree it does, but then it's also generating. Many questions. Andre Campbell, you're never late, my friend. Glad to see you. Apostan, hi there. Gino Marbella, how's it going? Levon Hall, you are everywhere. How are you doing today? Ton, I am all for improving, correcting, but scared of faking. Yeah, I think there's a lot of that. I think that sentiment is shared among many. And there's also just something that we've talked about a lot. I realize this is like a very intimate stream today. There's a lot of just do you lose the passion of doing the thing that you love that made you want to do it in the first place? Maybe you don't. I've talked a lot about this. Generative music. My gosh, Suno AI. Now we've already talked about that on the show here, but this past week I was chatting with world-renowned photographer Rick Salmon. If you don't know Rick, he's amazing photographer, trainer, instructor, piano player. He's many things, and he was creating Suno songs and posting them. I'm trying to remember what the most recent one was. It doesn't matter. The point is, again, compared to even 4, 5, 6 months ago, the output that they're able to generate now is, it's sick. It's real. It's good. Now, as someone who makes music, I've said it many times, that doesn't interest me. Like, it's cool. It doesn't interest me to use that because part of, at least music, not only for listening, but for, augmenting something that I'm editing or working with, I want to get in there and I want to play those drums. That's why I keep them mic'd all the time now. Abbey Road style, 1969, with towels. That's it for me. That does it. That's the thing. I want to hear that. I want to EQ those toms. And yeah, I want to spend all that gritty time doing it. Now, thinking about that, if, we could imagine, I'm sure it's already there. Maybe I've just missed it, They already have AI mastering assistants. Maybe there's AI mixing assistants that do all the EQ and everything as you open up the DAW. Again, some of it is, I like doing the tweaks and messing around with it. Now, granted, it's not to say that you couldn't use AI to do it and then have it finish or correct or suggest. I think that's one of the benefits of things like ChatGPT. It's suggestive. But where's the line? Is there a line? Or who cares? But specifically for like generative music, super cool. Doesn't interest me at all as a thing to do, but super cool. Like undeniably, wickedly cool, really awesome. It's really good. I heard a track, I may have said this last time. What's up, Joost? Joost van der Hoven, great to see you. Oh, you're in London, hey. What was I just saying? Music. I forgot it already. I'm sorry, I'm reading the chat. And now everybody's getting busy. Okay. Howard says, okay, as someone who's terrible at color grading, I don't have much time. I would love if AI could help me in that area. Transform my day scene into night. Yes, exactly. And now again, you might say, a colorist might say, yeah, but that's the passion. Sure, right. So there's two sides of it. But even for me, also, I've said this many times, not a colorist, I can get good results. And part of it is the joy of experimenting and tweaking and messing around with things. Autocolor kind of gets you there to some degree in Premiere, similar to Auto in Lightroom. I think it's maybe a little stronger on the imagery side. And then color match, same sort of thing. If I have a reference that I like, it kind of gets you there. And then it's not a black box, though. It's fully editable. I totally endorse that. I totally endorse all of it, frankly, because different people are going to have different feelings about it. Okay, who cares what I think? But for me, I know what I'd use it for, And in the case of generative video too, we talked about generative B-roll as something that eventually will be coming to Premiere. And I was just running into this weekend where I had a little thing I was editing for a little family thing, and I needed a few more seconds of this ocean clip. I didn't really. I could have just shortened everything else, but I wanted a few more seconds, and I wound up slowing it down. Served the same purpose, gave me back those extra 2 seconds. But wouldn't it have just been cool to drag it out and let it just regenerate a few more seconds of crashing ocean waves? Yeah. Is that cheating? It's using a tool. I don't know. So yeah, it's really interesting. It's deep for sure. Okay. Gino's saying, I suppose that it would need a deeper color space, that Rec 2020 or log. Yeah. Yeah, huge files. Keys. The Gen AI tech now is like the early quantized beat matching tech and early digital DJ software. There'll be people using it and people not doing it. Totally. And that's another great example. I remember that too. Talking about MIDI. In fact, I don't remember who I was talking about, but MIDI 1983, that well, you can go back to Mellotron and the Chamberlain 20 years earlier, or 17 years earlier, were like, this is going to kill orchestra workers and stuff. MIDI was thought of like, this is going to be and drum machines were going to be the end of live performers. And of course that wasn't going to happen, but it was the same sort of threat in the space. And I remember and part of it too, at the time in its initial incarnation was, it was very stiff. So it was accurate, it was on time, in time, it was tight, but it absolutely didn't sound, human. So then humanize and sort of quantizing with humanization became a thing a little bit later. And, in its infancy, it was okay. It got way better. I mean, now you can humanize things and it's, again, with the right samples, it's undeniably real. You'd be hard pressed, especially with multi-sampling as it is now. It was much more easy to detect humanized beats in the late 80s, early 90s, because the samples, even if multi-sampled, maybe there were three snare hits. So you'd hear a groove and like you'd hear the and the snares, those two snares were just identical. Timbre, pitch, volume, snare decay, and you'd be like, if you're an engineer, you'd hear, all right, that's a sample. It's good. It's a good sample. It's a sample, and it's the same sample. And if there were more of them, maybe you couldn't tell. Now with things like, I use Drumagog, drum replacement at times, and a single snare might have 26 different hits. So even though they're all the same, the slight variation makes it almost impossible to detect that that's not the recorded snare, right? So yeah, it's really kind of interesting. Michelle Saporito, I feel the same way. I'm not interested in AI because I want to create art and animations. And, I think more people need to say that. It doesn't take away from its kind of amazingness that it can be done. But as artists also, part of, Michael Fugoso, who's on my team as an evangelist, you may have seen him in Adobe Max London. Amazing illustrator, and he does some of the most detailed, crazy illustration stuff I've ever seen. It actually scares me even more in using Illustrator because I look at the detail of what he does and realize that's just never going to be me. But he talks about how he loves generative recolor because he loves to draw the lines, but the coloring of all the stuff, it's very time consuming. And that's not his thing. His thing is the illustration part. But that's the thing, the tedium of the illustration, of making every line, every curve, adding every gradient, doing all the things that he does, spoken like a true illustrator, that's where the passion is. That's what fuels him wanting to do it. But again, as he showcased, maybe there's times where you want to just ideate or come up with something different or get you started. Well, there's opportunities to do that with generative technologies. So I think they can coexist. I think there's a lot of people who seem like it's one or the other. That creepy CEO person, were they from OpenAI? That CEO lady who said something like, and AI is going to replace jobs, and maybe those jobs didn't need to exist in the first place. What? What's that? That's just dopey. What? You could maybe say that about some things, but in creative spaces, the creative things shouldn't have existed in the first place. That's what led you to design something to replace it. That's just weird. Again, I think they can coexist completely. And undeniably, some of them now are super crazy. CapCut, Dreamina, that's another one. Kling, as I mentioned, that one. It's funny, that one, it had this weird arc. It was like amazing. Oh my God, this is killer. And then Dreamlabs and Gen 3 happened. And so I haven't seen a post about Kling in 2 or 3 weeks, which is pretty crazy. Megan Kissel, how are you doing? All right. Oh, we got a lot of comments on color grading, Howard. Yeah. Seems like we need to improve some of that in Premiere for sure. All right, Jimmy Dean, what's up? What are we talking about? Just having a conversation about AI and video. It's very informal today. I just really want, and thank you all. You're being very, very active. Great crowd today. Thank you. DJ Monks, I love watching your tutorials on YouTube. You give so much information on how to use the software program. I'm enjoying using it so much. Oh, thank you, DJ Monks. I really appreciate that. All right, Chase. What have you got to say? I've been thinking a lot about how AI may have the same effect that CG had on cinema. It definitely opened up what's possible for visual storytelling, but quickly overshadowed the magic of filmmaking and making audiences wonder, how did they do that? Yeah, and VFX is another one of those. And Howard kind of alluded to this earlier where, and I imagine as we move forward, you know, consistency, not just in terms of character, but in terms of, you know, lens flare, you know, J.J. Abrams is like, no, I have my established look. Yeah, like, again, and you said the right word there. It's the magic. Now, there's magic in the generative side. Just literally, it's quite magical that it can do what it does or how it does it and quickly. But in practice, does that steal some of that magic for the viewer? Does it steal some of the magic for the creator? And does it introduce other issues in terms of having consistency and other things that just really, maybe that gets in your way, you know? Of all the little AI short films that I've seen, well, I suppose maybe I saw one recently that had a bit more of a consistent vibe, but it's all very thematically consistent pieces. They're all very, some of them that I've seen too. I'm not saying all. A few that I've seen, they've leaned into this kind of dystopian thing, which, again, is great. Looks cool. I don't know, make me laugh or something. I don't know. End of world, you know, generating end of world content, super great, you know. I'd love to see something comedic. Also, I was thinking about this too, you know, as we talk about character generation and consistent character generation, and including voice. And of course, you have all these AI models that'll do voice cloning, and much easier to get those consistent. But you know, I don't know. Do you envision people falling in love with generated characters? I mean, well, that's already happened, I guess. But en masse. And this goes for music too. You know, all this stuff I've been seeing nonstop about Taylor Swift. The last show in London? Was it the last of the Eras tour? Sorry, I know this, but yeah, I do. Travis Kelce getting up on stage. Saw that. All right. I like Jason a little more than Travis, but he's fine. You know, thinking about that, people love Taylor, right? They love her, all the things about her, all the stories that she comes up with because they're her stories. Now, you could generate a lot of those same stories. This guy wronged me. This guy's a whatever. Are you going to identify in some way? I mean, you can identify with the words, but what do you identify with in terms of the thing? And maybe that's it. Maybe future generations, it won't be a thing. It won't be Beatles or Taylor Swift or Dave Grohl or Little Richard or James Brown or Katy Perry or Britney Spears. Britney. You know, maybe it'll just be avatars. And maybe that's enough. Maybe it's better. Maybe that's safer. I don't know. Go Chiefs. Yeah, Sean. Jay Patoka, are hands fixed yet? And why are hands difficult? You know, it seems, in fact, I think it was in Dream Labs. I saw something where it was like a person doing something like this. It's definitely way better. I've seen some other even standard image generations that still are, you know, not the best. Hands are hard, apparently. David Bazulto, how are you doing? Long time no see. As someone who can't play an instrument to save his life, I am loving AI music generation. Yes, exactly. And that's my point, is that I'm the first to say, it's so good now. You know, go to a year ago. A year ago, it was, it was terrible. I started to say, and I distracted myself. I heard something a week or two ago. It sounded like The Strokes. It sounded like early 2000s New York City alt rock. Dry drums, upfront guitars, kind of whining, vocal. It was undeniably awesome. But I'm like, oh, well, who is that voice? Who is that person? I want to look them up. I want to know things about them. But it's hard to do that in this space. But this is something to think about. You've all been amazing today. Thank you so much for so much commentary. My gosh, this is how this should be. Just talking. I haven't even showed a screen. This is amazing. Well, thank you so much for being a part of it. Have a great rest of your morning, evening, afternoon, wherever you are in the world. I will see you tomorrow, 10 a.m. Pacific time or 10:30 Pacific time, hosting Mike Milo here on Adobe Live. Amazing animator and illustrator, so stick around for that. Until then, everyone, take care. We'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.